Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're actually going to do something a little bit dangerous.
Oh, I like dangerous.
Yeah, well, we are going to suggest that despite all the incredible tools we have at our fingertips today, I mean, the AI image generators, the 3D rendering engines that can literally simulate individual photons of light bouncing off a surface, the motion capture suits, despite all of that, there is one analog, somewhat dusty skill that remains the absolute price of admission for true mastery.
Right. It's basically the eat your vegetables of the creative world. But the thing is, the vegetables are actually delicious if you know how to cook them.
Exactly. And to make this argument, we are opening up a legendary text. We're looking at the Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams. But we aren't trying to summarize the whole massive book today. We're laser focused on Chapter 3, which has this deceptively simple title, Time to Draw.
It sounds so simple, just time to draw. But this chapter is really a philosophical treatise on how to see the world. And before anyone tunes out thinking, I'm not an animator, or I can't even draw a stick figure, you really need to stick with us. Because Richard Williams makes a point very early on that honestly stopped me in my tracks.
Right, because I think the immediate assumption for you listening at home is, this is history lesson. This is just for people who want to work at Disney in 1950 doing pencil and paper stuff.
Which is a totally fair assumption given the title and the author. But Williams explicitly addresses the digital revolution. He notes that while he wrote this for the classical animator, the person sweating over a light table with a pencil, he discovered something really fascinating about the computer animation world.
What was that?
The people at the very top of the field, the ones pushing the absolute boundaries at Pixar or ILM or DreamWorks, they all draw.
And not just casually doodle in the margins, they draw well.
They draw exceptionally well. And Williams argues that for the computer artist, the ability to put down your ideas quickly is even more critical. Because computer software is just so complex, it's technical. If you have to fight the software and figure out your idea at the exact same time, you're in real trouble.
Yeah, your brain is splitting its processing power.
Exactly. But if you can sketch it, even if it's just a shorthand stick figure that captures the energy of the pose, you've essentially solved the problem before you ever touch the mouse.
So the mission today isn't to convince you to go become a fine artist. It's to unpack why learning to draw is actually about learning to understand structure. It's about acting through a pencil.
It's about making that connection between the brain and the hand completely second nature. Because once that connection is seamless, you aren't thinking about how to make the mark anymore. You're just thinking about the performance.
We have a ton of ground to cover. We're going to talk about the trap of the formula, which I think honestly applies to every single creative field, not just visual art. We're going to look at 3 very specific, pivotal pieces of advice Williams received at age 15, then at his mother's deathbed, and then at age 50, which is a wild timeline.
Yeah, the span of a whole life right there.
And then we're going to talk about the crisis in art education.
That crisis section is going to be spicy.
Oh, it is. But let's start with the trap. Section 1, the trap of the formula. Williams talks about the reality of being a professional animator. It is an absolute grind. You have deadlines, you have quotas, you have to hit every week. And he says it is incredibly easy in that environment to slide into what he calls formula drawing.
Formula is just a very seductive thing. In any job, really. You find a way to do something that works, it gets approved by the boss, and it doesn't require 100% of your brain power.
So you just do it again.
And again. And in animation, this means you stop observing the real world. You stop looking at how a real person actually smiles, and you start drawing the smile that you learned how to draw 3 years ago.
You're essentially photocopying your own bad habits over and over.
Precisely. You're echoing yourself rather than reflecting reality. And Williams shares a poem to illustrate this that it's brilliant. It was actually pinned up on the notice board during the production of Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
which he directed the animation for.
Right. It's by Robert Graves, and it's titled Epitaph of an Unfortunate Artist.
I found this poem to be, it's darkly funny, but it's also kind of terrifying if you work in any creative field. It's a literal horror story for creatives.
It really is. It's a huge warning sign.
Do you want to read it? I feel like we need to hear the rhythm of it to really understand the trap he's talking about.
Sure. He goes like this. He found a formula for drawing comic rabbits. This formula for drawing comic rabbits paid. So, in the end, he could not change the tragic habits this formula for drawing comic rabbits made.
The tragic habits this formula made, that line right there. In the end, he could not change. That's the scary part. It's not just that this artist became lazy, it's that he became literally incapable of doing anything else.
It's muscle memory cementing into a prison. The formula pays the bills, the formula for drawing comic rabbits paid, but it cost him his artistic soul. He built a cage out of easy success. And Williams uses this specific poem to pivot to the solution. If formula is the disease of the professional, what is the cure?
And the cure he presents is life drawing.
Life drawing.
Now, for you listening who might envision a very dramatic scene from Titanic, draw me like one of your French girls, can we define what life drawing actually means in this specific context?
Technically, it means drawing from a live model, usually nude, in a dedicated studio setting. But psychologically, Williams describes it as a completely different universe from the commercial animation studio.
How so? What's the contrast?
Well, think about a workplace. Animation is a massive group effort. It's noisy. There's office politics. There's the cut and thrust of the industry. You have people praising you, directors critiquing you, producers yelling about deadlines. It's a very extroverted, chaotic, collaborative environment.
And the life drawing class.
It's total silence. It's complete solitude. Even if there are 20 other students in the room with you, you are entirely alone. It's just you, the model, and that terrifying blank sheet of paper. Williams actually calls it shocking to the ego.
I can completely imagine that. Because in the studio, you can hide behind your tricks. You can hide behind the comic rabbit formula.
Exactly. In the studio, if you use a formula, your boss might just say, "Great job, looks just like the last shot." In life drawing, if you use a formula, it's immediately obvious that you aren't looking at the actual human being in front of you. You're failing. There is no one there to admire your efforts. Usually you look at your paper after an hour and realize, wow, I am not nearly as good as I thought it was.
He calls it the hardest thing to do with no rewards other than the thing itself. That is such a tough sell for the modern brain. We want the dopamine hit. We want the likes on social media. We want the paycheck. And he's essentially saying, go do this incredibly difficult thing that makes you feel utterly incompetent and pays you absolutely $0.
But the payment is deferred. He says it provides a gradual and fundamental improvement of all one's work. Think of it like a professional athlete going to the gym.
Okay, yeah.
A football player doesn't get paid for doing squats in a quiet room.
Yeah.
No one is cheering for them when they're doing squats. It hurts, it's boring, and it's super repetitive. But if they stop doing those squats, on Sunday, they get tackled and they can't break the line.
They lose their explosiveness, they lose their foundation.
Right. Life drawing prevents your artistic muscles from atrophy. It forces you to constantly re-observe reality, so you don't just fall back on a cheap symbol of reality.
It seems like the masters of the craft, the really big names that Williams looked up to, they all agreed on this. This wasn't just Williams being some cranky purist. We have a whole section here on what the absolute legends thought about draftsmanship.
And they were ruthless about it. Take Art Babbitt, for example.
Yeah.
He was one of the key figures in the development of animation as a true art form. He gave this ultimatum that I think haunts animation students to this day. He said, if you can't draw, forget it. You're an actor without arms and legs.
An actor without arms and legs. I kind of want to push back on that for just a second, just to play devil's advocate here. Is that entirely fair? There are incredible stop-motion animators or even modern 3D animators who maybe can't draw a perfect human figure on paper, but they have incredible innate timing. Is Babbitt being a bit of an elitist gatekeeper here?
It really sounds like gatekeeping, doesn't it? But let's look closer at the metaphor. An actor without arms and legs. He's not saying you have no soul or no talent. He's saying you have no means of expression. In Babbitt's time, if you couldn't draw, you literally could not output the performance onto the screen. Today, maybe the arms and legs are the digital rig in the computer. But the core sentiment remains. If you don't master the actual interface between your brain and the audience, you are creatively paralyzed.
So for him, drawing was the only interface available.
Right. And then you have Milt Kahl. Now, for those listening who don't know animation history, Milt Kahl is basically the Michael Jordan of Disney animation. He was one of Walt's 9 old men. He was completely untouchable.
The legend among legends.
Yes. And Milt Kahl believed you absolutely cannot be a top-notch animator without being an excellent draftsman. But his reasoning is what's so fascinating. It wasn't about making pretty museum-quality pictures. It was all about differentiation.
What does that mean in this context? Differentiation.
He said you need to know the human figure well enough so that you can concentrate on the performance and the difference between characters. If you are sitting there struggling just to put the eyes in the right place on the face, you have 0 brain cycles left to think about, wait, how does this specific shy character smile differently than that arrogant character?
You're just trying to survive the drawing. You're just trying to make it look like a face.
Exactly. You just end up drawing a generic person every time.
Yeah.
Milt Kahl argued that deep knowledge of the figure is what enables you to caricature and exaggerate correctly. He had this great quote. He said, "If you don't know the straight way, you can't lampoon it."
That's a phenomenal line. If you don't know the straight way, you can't lampoon it. It's exactly like comedy. You have to deeply understand the truth of a situation before you can construct a joke about it. If you don't understand the fundamental truth, the joke just falls flat.
Or it just looks like a mistake. That's the key difference. If a master distorts a face, it looks like a brilliant artistic choice. If a novice distorts a face, it just looks like they slipped and messed up the proportions.
Then we have Winsor McCay mentioned here. We're going way, way back now. Little Nemo, Gertie the dinosaur, the absolute pioneer.
The grandfather of the entire medium. And even he had regrets later in life. He said that if he were starting all over again, the very first thing he would do is make a thorough, exhausting study of draftsmanship, perspective, and the human figure, both nude and clothed. This is a guy who basically invented the art form, looking back and saying, I really should have spent more time on the basics.
It's incredibly humbling. It really suggests that this isn't a skill you just master in a semester and move on from. It's a lifelong daily practice.
Which leads us perfectly into Williams's own personal journey. Because this chapter isn't just a dry lecture, it's actually a memoir. He structures his whole learning process through 3 specific pieces of advice he received at 3 very different stages of his life. And these aren't just casual little tips he picked up. These were moments that fundamentally altered his entire trajectory.
The first one happens when he is just a kid. He's 15 years old. And the context here is just cinematic. It's wild.
It's a coming-of-age movie, just waiting to happen. So, 15-year-old Richard Williams is living in Toronto. He is completely obsessed with animation. He's that kid drawing constantly in the margins of his school textbooks. And he decides he needs to go straight to the source.
So he just gets on a bus.
A bus. From Toronto all the way to Los Angeles. That is a 5-day and night trip. Imagine a 15-year-old kid in the late 40s bouncing across the entire continent on a dusty Greyhound bus, just clutching his little portfolio of drawings.
He must have been terrified, but also fueled by that very specific brand of teenage arrogance where you just think, I'm going to show up and they're going to hire me on the spot.
Oh, absolutely. He was full of it. So he arrives in Burbank, and he goes directly to the Disney studio. And he just camps out. He literally sits outside the fence. He's just staring at the buildings where all the magic happens.
It's a literal pilgrimage for him.
Eventually, he actually manages to get in. His mother had some loose connection to someone who worked there, and he worms his way through the gates. He's inside the studio for 2 days. And he finally gets a meeting with Dick Kelsey, who is a Disney story artist.
This is the moment he pulls out his drawings.
He shows Kelsey all his sketches of the famous Disney characters. And Williams admits later in the book, these were actually good drawings. He says they were Roger Rabbit level quality. He was a genuine prodigy. So he's sitting there waiting for Kelsey to say, you're a genius, you're hired, kid. Here's a desk right next to Milt Kahl.
And what does Kelsey actually say to him?
Kelsey looks at this precocious little bastard. And those are Williams' own words. And he says, first of all, kid, learn to draw. You can always do the animation stuff later.
That has to be so devastating. Learn to draw. He's sitting there thinking, I just showed you drawings. I obviously can draw.
Right. And Williams actually pushes back on him. He says, but I am learning to draw. And Kelsey clarifies it for him. He basically tells him, no, you're learning to copy. You're just copying our studio's style. You're drawing drawings. You need to learn to draw life.
That is such a crucial distinction. And we see this all the time today with people who learn to draw by exclusively copying anime or comic books. They can draw a mathematically perfect anime eye, but they literally cannot draw a real human eye.
Exactly. Because they're learning a simple system.
Yeah.
They aren't learning underlying structure. Kelsey was telling him to go learn the absolute foundation, not just the surface decoration.
So that's advice number 1 right there. Learn to draw, the animation can wait. Advice number 2 comes from a very, very different source, his mother.
Yeah, this is a much more intimate, quiet scene. Years have passed since the Disney trip. Williams is older, he's an established professional. His mother, who was actually a commercial illustrator herself, is bedbound. She's dying. And Williams brings his portfolio to her room. He's showing her his life drawings from his classes.
He's looking for approval from the person who basically gave him his artistic genes.
Right. And she looked at the drawings for a long time, and finally she just says, very nice, nothing new.
Nothing new. Man, that is brutal to hear from your mom.
It's brutally honest. She observed that he, and honestly many art students she had seen, were falling into the trap of style. They were all trying to develop a signature. They wanted the drawing to look like their unique drawing, rather than looking like the actual subject they were observing.
This feels incredibly relevant to the current Instagram era. Everyone is so obsessed with their brand, you want people to scroll past your image on their feed and instantly know it's you. Oh, that's totally a so-and-so piece.
We constantly prioritize our identity over true observation, and his mother saw that happening to him. Her advice was so clear. She said, don't try to develop a style. Ignore style. Just concentrate on the drawing and style will just occur.
Ignore style. That is the actual advice.
It's profound, really. She's saying that style is just a byproduct. It's the unavoidable natural result of your unique physical hand and your unique brain trying to tell the truth on a piece of paper. If you try to force a style, you're essentially putting on a costume. But if you just focus intensely on the drawing, the style is you.
Williams connects this idea to Tex Avery, which I thought was a fascinating left turn. Because Tex Avery is basically the undisputed king of style. He's the guy who made eyeballs pop out 3 feet from a character's head. He made the wolf hit himself on the head with a giant mallet.
Right, you'd think Tex Avery would be the loudest advocate for, screw reality, just have a crazy style. But Avery actually told Williams, I was never too great an artist. I knew I'd never make it, so I had to go the other route. Meaning, don't try to be the perfect Disney realist. But here's the paradox of that.
What's the paradox?
Tex Avery's cartoons were completely wild, but he relied entirely on draftsmen who knew the strict rules to execute his wild vision. He desperately needed animators who deeply understood weight and articulation, because when the wolf's jaw unhinges and drops to the floor, it has to drop with real physical weight. If it just floats down, it's not funny. It has to feel like physical comedy, and physical comedy absolutely requires an understanding of physics.
So even the wild route is completely paved with foundational skill.
Exactly. You just can't escape it.
Okay, so we have learned to draw at age 15. We have ignore style from his dying mother. The third piece of advice is the one that really blew my mind, because it happens when Williams is 50 years old.
He is at the absolute peak of his career here. He has won over 200 international awards. He has his own massive studio in London. He is the guy. And he hires a 23-year-old artist named John Watkiss.
A 23-year-old completely self-taught kid.
And this kid, Watkiss, is just fearless. He looks closely at Williams' work, the work of a multi-award-winning master, and he says, hey, you missed the stage.
I just cannot imagine the sheer guts it takes to tell your boss, who is a living legend, hey man, you missed a stage.
And not just like you made a tiny mistake on this frame, but there is a fundamental gaping hole in your entire art education.
Yeah.
Watkiss diagnosed Williams right there as being linear.
Okay, we really need to stop here and unpack this.
Yeah.
Linear. To a layperson listening, drawings are made of lines, so isn't literally every single drawing linear? What was Watkiss actually criticizing there?
This is really the core technical concept of the whole chapter. When Watkiss said linear, he meant that Williams was just drawing outlines. Think of a kid's coloring book. You draw a line that goes all the way around the outside of the character's arm to define the shape. You are just defining the edge of the object.
Right. That's how most of us doodle on a napkin. We draw the silhouette.
But Watkiss pointed out that nature does not have outlines. If you look down at your own arm right now, there isn't a thick black line running down the side of it. There is just the point where your arm ends and the air begins. Watkiss told him he needed to start drawing from the inside out. He said he needed to draw like a sculptor.
Like a sculptor. Help us visualize that.
Yeah.
How on earth do you draw like a sculptor when you just have a flat piece of paper and a pencil?
Well, a sculptor doesn't start with the skin of the statue. They start with the armature, the metal wire inside. Then they add the clay for the bone structure. Then they add the clay for the muscles on top of that. They build the volume from the core outward. Watkiss wanted Williams to draw the actual mass of the form. The lines on the paper shouldn't just lazily trace the outer edge. They should wrap around the form to show the viewer how round it is.
So it's like instead of just drawing a flat circle to represent a ball, you're using lines that curve across the middle to show the spherical nature of it.
Exactly. It's the difference between looking at a flat map of the world and holding a 3D globe. If you draw linearly, your characters tend to look very flat. They look like little paper cutouts sliding across the screen. But if you draw structurally or sculpturally, your characters suddenly have true weight. They occupy real space. When they turn around, they don't lose their volume.
And how did Williams react to this? I mean, a 23-year-old upstart telling him he drew like a coloring book?
This is honestly what makes Williams a true master. He didn't fire the kid. He just felt totally exposed. He said he felt like a butterfly pinned to the wall because he instantly knew it was the truth. He realized in that moment that sculpture had always been his weakest subject back in art school. So at age 50, wildly successful and famous, he went all the way back to the beginning. He started restudying anatomy from scratch. He advanced backwards to fill in that missing stage.
That is the absolute definition of a growth mindset.
It really is. It's the humble admission that mastery is an asymptote. You get closer and closer to the line, but you never quite touch it. There's always something more to learn.
This leads us directly into section 4, which is about believability versus realism. Because when we talk about intense anatomy study and drawing muscles from the inside out, I think listeners might get the wrong idea. They might think, oh, so the ultimate goal of animation is to draw photorealistic humans that look exactly like a medical textbook.
And Williams warns against exactly that trap. He literally calls it the trap of anatomy. You don't want to be imprisoned by your new knowledge. You see this all the time in student work. They finally learn exactly where the bicep connects to the forearm, and suddenly every single character they draw looks like a flexed bodybuilder. Because they are just so desperate to show you, look, I know where the muscle goes.
They're showing off the diagram rather than actually drawing the character's emotion.
Right, the goal isn't to draw an anatomy diagram. The goal is to get the physical coordination, to get the brain down into the pencil. You want all that structural knowledge to be there, but you want it hidden. It needs to be subconscious.
He distinguishes very carefully between realism and believability. This is a key concept for animation, but I think it applies to writing and acting too.
Oh, it applies to all fiction. Cartoon animals do not look like real animals. I mean, Mickey Mouse is not a realistic mouse. If you saw a creature with perfectly round black ears that always face the camera, white gloves, and red shorts running across your kitchen floor, you wouldn't say, oh, look at the cute mouse. You'd scream and call an exterminator. Because he's a monster.
He's an absolute abomination of nature.
He is. He's a graphic design. He's a mental construct. But for him to actually work on a movie screen, his movements must be believable. Frank Thomas, who is another one of those Disney legends, had a really great quote about this exact thing. He said, if you saw a Lady and the Tramp walking down the road, there's no way that you're going to buy that they're real dogs.
But when we watch the movie, we buy it completely. I mean, I cry when they're in the pound. I'm genuinely worried about them.
You buy it because the movement is deeply believable. The underlying structure holds up. And that believability comes directly from the artist studying the real animal figure first. You study the real dog for hours to understand exactly how the shoulder blades slide under the skin when it walks. Then, you take that mechanical truth and apply it to the stylized cartoon design. You depart from reality, but you strictly maintain believability.
So the audience feels the weight, even if the drawing itself is incredibly simple.
Exactly. Tex Avery, again, is the absolute master of this. He created a reality for his characters where physics was completely optional, but mass was mandatory. Even when a character gets flattened into a literal pancake by a safe, they have the specific heavy weight of a pancake.
There's a phrase Williams uses here that I wrote down. Don't confuse a drawing with a map.
We are animating masses, not lines. That's the core mantra. A map is just a 2D representation of a territory. A drawing should be the territory itself. If you think of your drawing as a map, your final animation will just look like a road map sliding around the screen. If you think of it as mass, it suddenly comes alive.
I want to shift gears here to something a bit more political, or at least culturally contentious within the art world. Williams devotes a very significant portion of this chapter to what he calls the crisis in art education.
This is definitely where the book gets a little fiery. Williams was writing this from the perspective of a studio owner trying to hire new talent, and he was deeply frustrated.
He pinpoints a massive shift that happened in the late 1960s. He says, realistic drawing, the rigorous observational training we've been discussing this whole time, became completely unfashionable.
It was the massive rise of modernism, abstract expressionism, and conceptual art. And let's be fair for a second, that was a wildly exciting time for art history. Breaking the old rules is important. But Williams argues that the pendulum swung so far in the opposite direction that the schools just completely stopped teaching the rules entirely.
He has the specific story about the Slade School in London. This is a world-famous, incredibly prestigious art institution.
Right, so he's at a dinner talking to a very distinguished painter who teaches at the Slade. And the painter asks him, how did you learn how to do animation? What's the secret? And Williams says, well, life drawing. I learned at art school.
And the painter is just shocked.
He's completely floored. He reveals to Williams that they don't teach life drawing anymore. He says, if the students want to do that, meaning draw from a live model, they've got to club together and hire themselves a model and do it in their own home.
Imagine paying exorbitant tuition to a top-tier art school and being told, hey, if you want to learn the actual fundamentals of the human form, you got to do it on your own time in your living room.
It was just considered totally passé. It was old-fashioned to them. And there's another story he tells right after that about a visit to a college in Canada, specifically a program for computer animation students.
This one feels very modern, very applicable today.
Williams is up there giving a guest talk. He looks closely at the students' demo reels, and he sees a total lack of fundamental drawing ability. The high-tech ideas are there, but the execution of the movement is stiff and awkward. But there's a professor in the room, a graybeard, as Williams calls him, who interrupts him.
He gets defensive about his program.
He says, "What do you mean? All of us here draw very well." He's clearly protecting his students, but he's also fiercely protecting his own curriculum.
So Williams basically calls his bluff in front of everyone.
He totally does. He walks right up to the chalkboard or maybe an easel in the room, and he just casually demonstrates a basic walk cycle. Just a simple, rough bit of animation showing how weight shifts and balance works, and the reaction from the room is immediate. The students physically mob him.
They swarm him at the board.
They are pleading with him. They're saying, "Teach us. Show us exactly how you did that," because the students instinctively knew. You just can't lie to yourself when you see actual mastery happening in front of you. They knew in their gut they were missing something vital, even if their professor kept telling them they were doing just fine.
They were completely hungry for the foundational tools that had been systematically denied to them.
It all culminates in this big conference in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Williams is invited as a sort of wild card speaker to address the deans of the leading American art colleges.
So he's finally in a room with the actual people who decide the curriculum.
And he just does not hold back. He says he found himself standing up there nearly in tears. He tells them, "I can't hire your people." He says the portfolios he gets from their graduates are full of textures, abstract collages, scribbles, but absolutely no real drawing. He's a business owner, desperate for employees who can actually do the physical work, and he can't find them.
Now, play devil's advocate for me here. Was he just being an old man yelling at clouds? Was he just totally failing to appreciate the new avant-garde style of the youth?
There's always the question with these generational divides. But look at how the deans responded to his speech. They didn't argue with him. They actually admitted he was totally right. But they cited two massive systemic problems. First, they admitted they had no teachers left who could actually draw because the previous generation simply wasn't taught. The chain of knowledge had been completely broken.
That's a really scary thought, a complete knowledge gap that spans an entire generation.
And the second problem was purely financial. They told him the rich students, the ones whose massive tuition checks literally funded the schools, didn't want to learn to draw. They wanted to express themselves as living works of art. They wanted the glamorous identity of being an artist without doing any of the brutal, boring labor of the craft.
That brings us right back to the idea of the price of admission. You can buy the expensive degree, you can buy the fancy software, but you cannot buy the skill.
Exactly. Williams is ultimately arguing for freedom through discipline. If you rigorously know how to draw realistically, you can then actively choose to draw abstractly. You can choose to make a collage. But if you can only do scribbles because you literally don't know how to draw a hand, you aren't actually making an artistic choice. You're just limited by your own incompetence.
That distinction, having the freedom of choice versus being trapped by your limits, is just crucial. And I think it leads to the final big misconception addressed in the chapter. The idea that if you can draw funny, that's enough.
Ah, yes, the straight versus the funny. This is the absolute most common defense of the amateur animator. They'll say, well, I'm not doing Sleeping Beauty, I'm doing SpongeBob. I don't need to know complex anatomy.
Right, they say, it's a cartoon, it's supposed to look weird and broken.
And Williams just destroys this myth with a quick history lesson. He talks about the mid-30s in Hollywood. A massive new wave of draftsmen entered the animation industry. These were guys who were trained as classical fine artists. And what happened to the old guard? They got wiped out. The guys who could only handle the cruder rubber hose cartoons lost their jobs immediately because the classically trained new guys could do the crude stuff better, and they could also do the sophisticated stuff.
He brings up the Milt Kahl curse here, which I just love.
It's the ultimate curse of competence. Because Milt Kahl drew so beautifully and accurately, he was always stuck animating the prints or the straight characters, the realistic human beings.
Which are famously the most boring characters. Everyone wants to animate the goofy sidekick.
Right. Everyone wants to animate the genie. Absolutely no one wants to animate Aladdin. The straight characters are actually the hardest things to animate because the audience judges them so much more harshly. If the prince walks even a little bit funny, he just looks like an idiot. If the genie walks funny, it's hilarious.
So Kaal was effectively trapped by his own elite skill level.
He deeply envied the zany stuff. He wanted to have fun at his desk too. But here's the lesson Williams points out. When Milk finally got a chance to do a truly zany character, he animated the tiger in a goofy short called Tiger Trouble. It was an absolute masterpiece. It is still considered one of the funniest, broadest bits of animation ever put on film.
Because he had that rock-solid foundation underneath the comedy.
Because he could manipulate the physical form with total, absolute control. If your foundation is strong, you can do anything straight or zany, subtle or broad. But if you can only do funny, you are severely limited. You're just trapped back in that comic rabbit formula again.
He also mentions Bill Titla in this section. For context, he animated the giant devil character in Fantasia Chernabog on the Mountain.
An incredibly terrifying, iconic sequence.
And he also did Stromboli the puppeteer in Pinocchio. Titla said that as an animator, you will eventually have to animate stuff where you can't just be cute and funny. You desperately need to know drawing to express force, vitality, and deep feelings.
Just think about Chernabog on that mountain. He's a massive demon summoning tortured spirits from the grave. It's raw, elemental power. You simply cannot express that kind of power with a shaky, formulaic 2D drawing. You need to deeply understand mass, weight, and torque. You need to understand the mechanics of the human machine to make a drawing look like a god.
So we've really covered a ton of ground today. We've gone from the cocky 15-year-old getting rejected at the Disney fence to the 50-year-old master realizing he was too linear, all the way to the systemic financial crisis in modern art schools.
It's a huge journey, but it all circles the exact same drain, the simple pencil.
If we had to distill all of this for the listener, maybe someone who works in digital marketing or coding or business management, what is the ultimate takeaway? Why does any of this matter if you aren't trying to animate a dancing bear?
I think the core takeaway is entirely about seeing. Drawing isn't just about creating a pretty picture to hang on a gallery wall. It is a fundamental tool for inquiry. It's a way of intensely deconstructing the world to understand exactly how it works.
It aggressively forces you to slow down and actually look at things.
Exactly. When you try to draw something, you have to understand its underlying structure. You have to figure out how part A connects to part B. For the professional animator, drawing is the actor's legs. But for anyone else, it's just a way of engaging with reality that goes so much deeper than just glancing at your surroundings.
I want to leave the listener with a final thought, something to really chew on after the episode ends. We talked a lot about style today and how his mother explicitly told him to ignore it.
Ignore style entirely.
In our current age, where we are constantly curating our online image, desperately trying to find our unique voice, and building our personal brand from day one, that advice feels incredibly radical.
It is radical. It fundamentally suggests that true individuality doesn't come from trying to be unique. It comes from trying to be relentlessly honest. You have to ask yourself, are you trying to develop a style, or are you actually trying to learn to see? Because if you just learn to see, the style will naturally follow. But if you only chase the style, you might just end up with a tragic formula for comic rabbits.
And before we go, we definitely should mention one specific visual from the chapter that really visually sums all of this up. There's an image of a leg. It's the famous movie poster for The Graduate.
Oh, right, the iconic leg with the stocking.
It's an incredibly simple design. It's just a clean line drawing of a leg. And Williams actually drew that.
He did. And he specifically notes in the book that a lifetime of intense life drawing was required just to draw that one simple leg. To make something look that effortless, simple, and elegant, you have to implicitly know all the massive complexity that lies underneath the skin.
That's a real aha moment for me. True simplicity is really just complexity fully resolved.
Beautifully put.
So, to you listening out there, whether you are an aspiring animator, a graphic designer, or just someone who wants to see the world a little more clearly today, pick up a pencil. It doesn't have to be for a museum. Just do it to see.
Time to draw.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Keep draw.